Knowing how to find food in the wilderness is one thing, but knowing how to preserve it is something else. In previous videos, I've shown how to use techniques like air drying and smoking to preserve meat and fish, and how to render fat for long-term storage. In this video, we're focusing on fruit, and because I have an abundance of wild cherries, we're going to use that for the demo. Now keep in mind, this video is focused on long-term storage. We're talking months or even years without refrigeration. Now before we dive into this, I want to mention that you can keep even soft fruits like blackberries or currants for up to maybe a few weeks if you can keep them cool. This is how I kept fresh fruit on Season 8 of Alone. I dug a hole near a creek where the cool air would settle, lined that with split firewood, put my berries in, covered everything with moss, and like that, I was able to keep berries for over a month. But for long-term storage, we're gonna have to dry the berries. Now you might think that drying fruit and berries is as simple as just setting them in the sun. And while that'll work, there are some nuances that you need to know to get good results. The other way is to dry them over a fire. We're going to put both of these methods to the test so that we can better understand when one might be more useful than the other and what the differences are. Since I'm using cherries, I'm going to go ahead and pit them. So we'll just spread these cherries out on this board in the sun and see what happens. We've got all our cherries spread out on our board there, and it's kind of intermittent sun and clouds today, but we've got a nice breeze and low humidity. So we'll just kind of keep track of those and see how long it takes to dry out. The second method, which is the one I prefer, is to dry the berries in a pot over a fire. In a truly primitive scenario, you may be using pottery, but for this demo, I'm going to use a Dutch oven. Smash these up a bit. So when this process is done, we're going to end up with something that's kind of like a dehydrated chunky cranberry sauce type of stuff, like a chunky fruit leather. All right, I think that's good. All right, so I'm just gonna put this over the fire, pretty good ways above the fire. I don't wanna get this too hot. This fruit has a lot of sugar in it, and sugar will burn very easily. So I just wanna heat it nice and slowly just to drive some of that moisture off. I'm gonna leave the lid off of it because we're trying to dry this stuff out. So I'm just gonna wanna let it steam and cook it very slowly. This is gonna take a while, and just as it's cooking, as it's drying out, I'm just gonna be continuously kind of stirring this stuff. Looks like cherry pie filling. We're getting there. Still a lot of moisture, but it's drying out. Just want to try one of these. That's good. Tastes like cherry pie filling, but not as sweet. Little bit of a tartness to it. We're getting dry now. So we're going on, I don't know, maybe 3 hours now, and these berries are drying out really well. They're still really gummy and tacky, so I'm just gonna leave them on here, dry them out a little bit more. Got a real low fire. It's just basically coals. Oh, I don't know, it'd probably be 180 degrees maybe, right here at the bottom of this pot. So we're about 6 hours in on this process, and these cherries are coming along really nice. They're still a little bit gummy, but I would say they're probably at a point now where they would keep. I don't think that these things would spoil. I think they would be just fine. So while these sit here and continue to dry, let's go up on the hill and see what our sun-dried cherries look like. These guys are drying, but they're drying very slowly. And that's because our skin is intact on these fruits. And the fruit skin is actually really good at retarding moisture loss. And so if we take the time to open these up, they'll dry a lot faster. I was hoping to not have to do that, but I think we might have to. So I'm just gonna open up a few of these and expose that internal pulp to the sun, put them skin side down, just see if that makes much of a difference. But sitting here and doing that with every single one of these things, especially, you know, if you were actually in a wilderness living or survival situation, you'd have gallons and gallons of these things, hopefully. And to sit there and do that with every one of them is just impractical. We should have full sun over the next few days and warm temperatures. So we're just gonna leave them here and see how long it takes these things to dry out good enough to keep without refrigeration. So these cherries have been out here for, oh, I don't know, probably 10 days or so. And they're nice and dry, probably as dry as they're gonna get. And we haven't had any rain, pretty low humidity. And so we're gonna take these down there and do a little taste test between the ones that I dried out over the fire in the pan or the pot and the ones that were dried in the sun. See if there's any difference. All right, so we've got our berries that I dried out in the little Dutch oven here, and the ones that were dried in the sun. So we'll give this a taste. It's good. Tastes like dried cherries. You want one, Hazel? Yeah, here. Hazel likes them. So there's definitely a difference in taste, and it's primarily the ones that I dried over the fire just have kind of a slight smoky flavor to them. So both of these methods work great. You end up with basically the same end result, dried cherries. Now there's going to be some of you out there that are wondering about the nutritional value of these two different things. I suppose that the ones you dry without heat out in the sun could potentially retain more nutrition, more vitamins, things like that. I don't have the expertise to really weigh in on that. I just know that it took less than a day to dehydrate the ones in the pot, and it took over a week to dehydrate the ones that were out in the sun, and that was in optimal conditions. And so if you're dealing with cooler weather, colder weather, oftentimes you'll deal with that in the fall when a lot of the berries are ripening. The sun drying just might not be a viable option, and so you might end up having to go with something like drying them in the pot like this. Once your fruit is to a state like this, the shelf life is very long. I know that I've had dried fruit like this on the shelf, no refrigeration or anything, for over a year. Now, if it's in dry conditions, it's going to continue to dry out. And one thing that you will notice is that some of the sugars in this fruit will start to crystallize, and so the texture of the fruit will change a little bit, but the the food value of it, as far as I know, doesn't change, and it's still going to be fine to eat. So we're just going to take these two things, we're going to mix these together, and I'm going to use them for a batch of pemmican. Now, of course, these were wild cherries and they needed to be pitted, but there's lots of other wild fruits that you wouldn't need to do that step, but the subsequent steps just to dry these out would all be the same. For drying in a pot over a fire, you just need to keep things very low, keep the lid off, let things dry out very slowly. If you're going to be drying them in the sun, it's going to really help a lot if you have good drying conditions. So low humidity, a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of breeze. One of the most important parts about drying fruit in the sun, though, is to break up that outer skin. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you learned something for the impending zombie apocalypse. See you on the next one. Thumbnail.